Hi, everybody. Are you looking for some free science fiction and fantasy books to get you through this weekend? We've got a bunch for you today because on our Free Friday list, we have two box sets, one a space opera, one set of six different romantasy books, plus we have an urban fantasy by a USA Today best-selling author and more. But before we get to that, hi everybody, welcome back to the MetaStellar YouTube channel. My name is Maria KOROLOV. I'm the editor here at MetaStellar, and we're an online publication publishing science fiction, fantasy, short stories, and a book serialization. Woohoo! And we have anthologies out. The third one has just hit the market. It's in the bookstores. Link in the description box below. Very exciting. I was helped out today by editors E.S. Foster and Terrence Smith. And Emma is here with us today. Hi, Emma.
Hey.
And I'm a little hyper because I'm not a lot of sleep and a lot of caffeine. Okay, so we do these free Fridays every single Friday where we review the first couple of chapters of the top 5 books on Amazon's free sci-fi and fantasy list. Yes, Amazon has a list of free books in the sci-fi and fantasy genre. The link is in the description box below, and authors and publishers will make the first book of their series free for short periods to promote the whole series. And it's really cool, definitely something to keep an eye on. And if you don't want to miss any of our free Fridays, subscribe to the channel and and we now have a join button. So if you really like what we do, you can hit the join button. All the money that's raised goes to pay for original fiction because all of us editors at MetaStellar are volunteers, including me and Emma. So please do support us. Love you. All the money goes to authors. All right, let's get into book number 5 on today's list. Oh, which is one that I began reading. And let me make that a little bit bigger for you guys so you guys can see it. Here we go. The book is called The Dusk Reapers by J.T. Lawrence. And J.T. Lawrence is a USA Today bestselling author. And the book definitely reads like it was written by a USA Today bestselling author. So this is the first of 6 books in the Curse Breaker, an urban fantasy series. The rest of the book are $5 to $6 each. The second book is in Kindle Unlimited, and the rest haven't been published yet, but they're scheduled to be released over the course of the next 2 months. So it looks like the entire series has been written, and she's releasing them he is releasing them very quickly. So definitely a good series to get into if you like reading all the books in a series at once, which is what I like to do. This is the author's first time on our Free Friday list. So there's nothing that I like better than getting a complete series for free, and it looks like this series is going to be in Kindle Unlimited, which means that if you pay $12 a month, you can read all the books you want without paying anything extra, kind of like a Netflix for books. So I'm a member. I mean, yeah, it all goes to Amazon, which is a big behemoth, but I do read a lot, so it's a really good deal. So I'm a big fan of urban fantasy and books with women on the cover, with weapons. I just love that. So I am 100% the target reader for this book. And the story opens with a prologue in South Africa in the late 1990s. A man and a woman are walking hand in hand through a forest. The man has an engagement ring hidden in his pocket. He brought the woman to the forest to propose to her in a beautiful setting, but the forest turns out to be a little creepy and he's starting to regret his decision. They come to a clearing and he unpacks the picnic with the champagne, and the woman looks away for a second to show how happy and to hide how happy and nervous she is. And then when she turns back to face him, he's gone. And she panics. They've been hearing wolf howls in the distance, and she's worried that somehow a wolf got him while her head was turned for a second. So, and then like more stuff happens. I'm not going to spoil everything, so I'm not going to tell you what happened. but I did find it very cool and enjoyable, and also perfectly creepy for Friday the 13th. I don't normally like creepy stuff, but I like the way this was written. So that was the prologue. Chapter 1 is set a few years later in 2022 and in a hospital. Our protagonist, Asha, I think that's the title of the chapter, she's shackled, her arms in padded cuffs, and she screams and struggles, and a metal tray flies across the room. And there's also voices in the room. They're talking about the fact that she's speaking Latin, and about how weird it is that a tray just flew across the room, and about the fact that her heart rate is spiking, but she's pulled out her IV and they can't get it back in. And if they don't give her a tranquilizer, her heart might stop again. Then she feels a sting in her thigh, and eventually the pain fades and she falls asleep. When she wakes up again, she's got a slightly better idea of where she is. She's in a hospital, surrounded by people in scrubs, wearing stethoscopes, and these people are saying that it's been 2 weeks and they're surprised that she even made it. And so she takes stock of what's going on. She's in a dry hospital bed. She survived some unknown trauma. She might be crazy. Who knows? And she can't remember her own name. So I love this beginning. I've already started reading the rest of the book. I think this is my reading for this weekend, and I am pretty stoked. I love the writing style. It's super engaging, and I love the main character. So I am all about this series. Definitely. Okay, next, book number 4 on today's list, because we're counting down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So book number 4 is The Conjuring of Ravens by Azalea Ellis. It's the first of 5 books in the Practical Guide to Sorcery fantasy series. The other books are $5 to $8 each, and they're not in Kindle Unlimited. So if you like them, you're going to have to pay cash for the rest of the series, even if you're a Kindle Unlimited subscriber. And this is the author's first time on a Free Friday list, and Emma read this for us. Emma, what did you think of this book?
So I was definitely interested when I started reading this because the book describes itself as mage punk, and I immediately thought, I have no idea what that is, but that sounds really exciting. So I got into it, and the story begins with a little prologue of sorts. It starts with a group of sorcerers, and they're traveling on this expedition through these treacherous mountains. And we get a lot of backstory about the different people who are on the mission, how they lost their lives. Some went insane, some wandered off and got lost, and they weren't able to be found. And it turns out that all of these people are different types of sorcerers. So they all wield this different magic. Except one of the few people, and it's this unnamed protagonist. He's one of the few people left, and he is an archaeologist. He manages to, on the expedition, finally find what this group is looking for, and it's this strange room carved into the mountainside. So inside, he finds this magic circle, there's this spell that's been cast on the ground, and then he finds a book. The book is unintelligible, you have no idea what it's got written on it, but he says that this is a code, and once everyone deciphers it, this will be able to solve all of the world's problems. No idea what those problems are or how they're going to be solved, but I'm pretty interested in moving forward. So we get to the main protagonist's point of view, Siobhan. She's also a sorcerer, and she's living with her father in a rented room in this village. However, there are a bunch of people after her, and she needs to climb up the wall and break into her own room with magic in order to escape, because she needs a bunch of stuff for her magic, like her grimoire, things like that. She needs to carry those with her, but the people outside are guarding that room, so she has to climb up the window and get in without tripping any alarms she set up, because she also set up like this her own alarm system with magic. So she has to sort of trip it up without setting it off so that she can get in without anyone knowing that she's there, grab her stuff, and leave. So she scurries down the ladder that she was climbing up, and she ends up falling the rest of the way, but she's okay. But that sort of tips everyone off that there's something going on. So the investigators catch up to her and they start chasing her. So they're chasing her through the different alleys of this town. She then comes across this mysterious man who lets her into his house. It's all dark in there. She doesn't really trust this guy, but the investigators catch up. They're searching the houses, and eventually they break down the door. And Siobhan is forced to reveal her secret, which is that she can transform into a man named Sebastian, but she doesn't have much control over it. We find out about this because when the people break down the door, in a moment of panic, she just kind of transforms into this guy, and they have to sort of like he and the man have to play along, saying like, "Oh yeah, we were just here, we don't know anything about a woman." So they're trying to hide it, but it turns out that the reason the people are chasing after her is because she doesn't have a license to practice the magic she's been using. So the only like that's the reason why the investigators are trying to come after her, but it also appears that the reason Siobhan can transform and hide from the people who are after her is because of an amulet she wears. The people after her believe that she stole it, but she insists that this wasn't actually the case. It turns out that the amulet was found inside the book, which was the book mentioned in that prologue, that previous chapter, and it's a magical artifact that sort of tied itself to her. Because initially she was curious about the book, she wanted to learn more about it. She stumbled across the book, and it ended up tying itself to her in this way. So the investigators leave. They're successfully able to prevent them from figuring out who Sebastian is. And the man offers her a deal. Join this gang of revolutionaries that he is part of, and she won't be arrested. He won't reveal her secret. So it looks like she doesn't really have any other choice. She's kind of forced to go with it. And so, like I said before, I haven't read Mage Punk before. I've never heard of it described as that, but I like the idea of science-based magic. The magic system, however, is very difficult to figure out. There is tons of information being pelted at me. And so like paragraphs and paragraphs of how she like created the spell to break into her room, that sort of thing. All these different ingredients and spells and like conduits and stuff that she needed. So eventually it just got really overwhelming. And there were some cool concepts in there, but in the end it felt like there was just like a lot of information coming in. So I don't think I'll continue with the story, but if that's something you're into, if you're into really overcomplicated magic systems, it's definitely a series I would recommend.
Sounds like something maybe Sanderson would write because his magic systems are pretty involved.
Yeah, it's just like it was just the mostly getting all of the information all at once.
Mm.
It's like having to figure out what was happening, and it just sort of ended up feeling convoluted that way.
All right. Okay, let's go on to book number 3 on today's list. Let me make that a little bit bigger for you guys so you guys can see it. It's Hammer of Fate by G.N. Gudgion. It's the first book in the Rune Song trilogy, an epic fantasy series. The other 2 books are $4 each, and they are both in Kindle Unlimited. And Emma read this for us. Again, Emma, what did you think of this book?
So I was also excited to look at this one because it combines like Vikings and magic. So I was really excited to see where this one went. And we're first introduced to Yurza. She is this woman, she's a witch. She lives on an island and she is the guardian of this temple like sort of place that acts as a coven. That's where her coven is located. But most of the coven has been killed. She's basically one of the only witches left, and more priests from other faiths, because there are all different kinds of religions in this world. They and a bunch of soldiers are on their way to sort of get rid of her as well, because they don't think that she should be worshiping this particular god. They think that she needs to be worshiping this other one. So Yrsa begins performing a ritual that would not kill her necessarily, but make her into a spirit guide of sorts. However, the soldiers looking for her catch on, and the spell doesn't end up working anyway. So she knows she's running out of time. So she goes to this couple in the woods. She travels across the marshes to them, and she tells them, hey, get out while you can, because apparently their daughter, who's only a baby at this point, she might be the answer to a powerful prophecy that was spoken by one of the coven members before they died. So with Yrsa's warning, the couple escapes, and Yrsa, on the other hand, dies just as the soldiers arrive. She continues using her magic, and she kind of makes herself grow old, and she dies right then and there. So it's not really clear if she ended up becoming a spirit guide or if the whole plan ended up failing. So years later, we start reading from Adelisa's perspective. This is the daughter from the couple that was mentioned earlier. She's currently trapped in this convent, and she's like one of the Novus nuns, but it's for one of the gods from earlier that she doesn't particularly want to worship, and she's also kind of stuck there. Like she isn't allowed to leave. She tried escaping before, she was severely beaten for it. So this time, she's succeeded in disguising herself as a man. She really wants to get back to her homeland, and luckily she's able to escape and get over the convent walls disguised as a man. So she makes it outside and she starts to prepare some magic because it's going to help her get home. But suddenly she spots a man who comes over, takes out a knife, and stabs somebody. So then this takes us to Mallory's point of view. He is like this priest of some kind, one of the many faiths in this town here. He stabbed the man to save his immortal soul. And at least that's what Mallory says. Not really sure how that works, but I'm not really sure what the train of thought was behind that, but the guy who was stabbed, who was actually a prisoner of Mallory, he ends up thanking him for it. So I guess he's like cool with it in the end. But just then, an assassin comes in and delivers the final blow to the prisoner. So he ends up killing him. But then the assassin is killed before Mallory can do anything. Because apparently, in that faith, if the priest talks to the person before they die, their immortal soul will be saved. Kind of like performing last rites, that type of thing. So it turns out that the assassin was a person called a guardian. So they kind of act against the main faiths of the story and something the priests and Mallory really want to get a handle on. They've been hunting them down for the past several years. So Mallory decides to find Guy, who is the son of the man who has been killed by the assassin. So here's where I stopped reading, because then we get to Guy's perspective, and this is like the fourth perspective of the story. So I feel like nothing has really happened as of yet, and there is a lot of information being thrown at me. So I don't really think I'm going to continue with this one, but I did still like the concepts of it, and I thought it had a really interesting premise. It was just like there's just so many perspectives coming at me that I thought, okay, I don't know if I'm ever actually going to get into the story at this point.
We need somebody to join our team who loves those complicated epic fantasy books with like 100 different points of view and all these
Yeah,
different people all plotting against each other
I
across
like epic
huge
fantasy
kingdom.
like that, and I like it when it's complex, but it's just like when everything is just being thrown at me all at once and it's difficult to keep track, that's when I start to lose interest. It's like a very fine line that you walk on.
Okay, yeah, I can see
Yeah.
that. All right, next we have um, another confusing book. Okay, so I was doubly confused by this. So first of all, I thought this was Enchantments and Enemies by Bridget E. Baker when I first saw this, and I thought, oh, it's a fantasy book. Okay, sure. And then when I started reading this, I was like, wait a second, this sounds really, really familiar. And I went back to take another second look at the cover, and I noticed that there's like 6 authors on this book. And what it actually is a box set of 6 full romantasy books by 6 different authors. And one, two, three, four, five, six, seven of those authors. How many books are in here? But anyway, 7 of those authors have been on our Free Friday list before. So these are popular authors that people love, and it looks like you're getting the first book of a whole bunch of different romantasy series. So great deal if you like to get a taste of a whole bunch of different romantasies all at once. Okay, so the first book in this box set is called Displaced. It's by Bridget Baker, and it's the first book in the 7-book The Birthright series, which is a fantasy series. And that book has been on our Free Friday list at least twice, and I reviewed it. And it seems to be set in a present day, but in kind of a parallel world Earth. So Chancery is 17 years old. She lives on an island in Hawaii. Her mother is the Empress and has ruled for nearly 900 years. And Chancery is an Evian, so some kind of a magical being. And she was born with a disability of some sort, should have been killed at birth, but wasn't. So these aren't necessarily nice kind of people because they kill infants at birth for being disabled. Her best friend Lark is secretly half human. And if the other avians find out that she's half human, they'll kill her. Again, as I mentioned, these avians do not seem to be like good people. Lark is a year older than Chancery, and she wants to be a spy. So she wants to get into the intelligence subsection and go out and live among the humans. But it's competitive. It's hard to get in. And so her plan is to defeat Chancery in a challenge. And since Chancery is daughter of the Empress, that will get her a spot in the intelligence subsection for certain. But people won't believe that the battle was for real and not staged because everyone knows that they're friends. So they decide to have a big public falling out. So if Lark can't get into this intelligence subsection, she'll be stuck working for her uncle Max, restructuring corporations all day long. So this is super confusing. Chancery isn't really enthused about throwing a fight, especially throwing it for someone as far down in the pecking order as Lark is. And Chancery is third in line for the throne, right behind her evil twin. Oh, she has an evil twin. Of course she does. And the human rulers on Earth know all about the avians. And Chancery's mother's birthday is coming up. This is the Empress. And the US president and a bunch of other global leaders are all coming to pay their respects. Because they're all just figureheads for these avians. And most humans don't know that the avians exist. They're like secret gods playing with human fates on a whim. Also, Chancery seems to have a crush on her evil twin sister's boyfriend. So, whoa, that's a lot of drama. And on a personal note, I didn't really like Chancery very much. Didn't like her mother, the Empress, and didn't like her best friend Lark in her schemes. And maybe I've gotten old and grumpy and hate teenagers and their problems, but I'm not going to stick with this book. I want them to get off my lawn. So yeah, so I'm not going to be sticking with it, but I do know that people love this kind of drama and love romantasy. So if you're one of them, it's a great deal. I mean, it's you get the whole bunch of first books in series for free. So totally recommend that you pick it up if you like this genre. And before we go on to book number 1 on today's list, which Emma is going to tell us about, and which Terrence Smith reviewed for us, I want to thank our Patreon supporters. Let me make that a little bit bigger for you guys. So as I mentioned, we are all volunteers here. So all the money raised through our Patreon goes to pay authors for their original fiction. And our next submission cycle is coming up in, 2 weeks on October 1st. So if you write original fiction, then mark your calendar. We pay 8 cents a word. And if you have stories that have been published already, like say, for example, in a small newsletter somewhere on your own website or with some other magazine, but you don't think they got the attention they deserved, you can submit it to us as a reprint. We do not pay for reprints, but our acceptance rates for them are much, much higher. And Emma is our reprints editor, and you already know her, so you've got it in. And I want to mention that I have books up on Amazon, and Emma is a professional editor who will help you write your book. Okay, let's go on to book number 1 on today's list. the Forgotten Colony series by M.R. Robes. And where you get a complete set of all 5 books in the space opera. And this space opera set is part of the 36-book Forgotten Universe. And the author has plenty of other books on Amazon, nearly all of them in Kindle Unlimited. So if you like space opera, space adventures, battles, all the best things in life, pick this up. And let's get into the review. So Emma, what did Terrence think of the beginning of the series?
So he says that the Forgotten Colony series starts off with Caleb, and he's a soldier who leads a rescue team called the Vultures. The mission at the start of book 1 is to rescue a team of scientists on planet Earth, and that's been decimated by a worldwide plague and an extraterrestrial menace known as the Stripe. So, worldwide plague immediately makes me think of COVID, and I think, oh boy, I don't know where this is going. But the Caleb and his team are slated to transport a truck containing their research to a ship set to leave planet Earth, and Caleb is set to go along with them. So initially, Terrence says, like, while the writing holds a lot of action, it's bogged down by a lot of jargon, both like the military and science fiction type of jargon, you know. The writing also goes into a lot of detail with things like ammo count, explaining things, the background of the universe, the characters, that sort of thing. So he says this ends up pulling him out of the action. He prefers writing that appeals to like human senses, make it feel like you're actually in the action instead of just hearing about it. And the story, he says the story might have actually worked better as a video game. So it's like the player can be on the field fighting the enemy. But he was surprised that with every cliffhanger of the chapter, because every chapter apparently ends in a cliffhanger, he was compelled to keep reading. And he also got this sense of danger facing these soldiers. So he says he might continue with the story, especially to see what happens to Caleb. So I thought this, like, reading this was really interesting because I haven't read too much military sci-fi, but it sounds like with this series, it can get pretty good, pretty high stakes.
I muted myself by mistake. I was saying I am a huge fan of military sci-fi, and military sci-fi, space operas, and urban fantasy are pretty much my 2 favorite genres. And so I can't. I've already picked this up, so I'll
Yeah.
check it out this weekend after I'm done with that urban fantasy book I'm reading. All right, I want to thank everybody for joining us here today. Don't forget to subscribe if you don't want to miss any of our free Fridays, and pick up these books before they're no longer free. They don't stay free for long. It's just a short-term promotion. So grab them while they're hot, and we'll see you next week. Oh, also, we have a newsletter that you can subscribe to, so you can get these books and our reviews of them in your inbox every Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. So thanks, everybody. And if you want to see a little bit more from us, check out our interviews with author E.E. King. She's an award-winning author and artist, and we are serializing her book, Gods and Monsters, and we're on episode 29 in that serialization. So check that out. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.